When programming, selection statements are one of the most important things to master. There are two kinds of selection statements, if-else statements and switch statements. You may know these as select case statements. They are similar in function, however there are some differences in the way they are implemented. First, I'm going to begin with an if-else statement. So let me quickly create some variables in order to evaluate, and I will get back to you. All right, now that we've created our variables, let's go over what an if-else statement actually is. If-else statements evaluate a Boolean expression and allow for multiple different Boolean expressions in the same if-else statement to be evaluated. It does this by using the if, else if, else statements. If statements evaluate the Boolean expression each time there is an if, else if statement. So now that you know what an if-else statement is, let's program one. We'll start with if coding. Don't forget your parentheses. If coding, and you don't need the equals. You don't need double equals true to check if it's true. Also remember, this is a Boolean operation to check if they are equivalent to each other. Single equal is assigning a value. You never want to have a single equal if you are using an if statement. It would always be double equals because that checks if the two are equivalent. But because we're checking if they're true, just putting if coding, that checks if coding is true. Then we'll do double ampersand. The difference between double ampersand and single ampersand is that double ampersand is and also, meaning that whatever is on this side is not evaluated if coding is false. So, if this were a single ampersand, even if coding was false, it would evaluate this, despite it never being able to run this because coding is false. So we're going to do double ampersand because it's more efficient, and then we'll do not procrastinating. The exclamation mark means not. Let's do curly braces. Don't forget the curly braces. Then if you're coding and you're not procrastinating, locked in equals true. And then you'll go outside of your curly braces if you want to do an else if. And then let's do procrastinating. And then we'll do those two lines. That means or. These two vertical bars signal or. Let's do if you're procrastinating or not locked in or not studying. And then let's do and also not coding. Then let's say locked in. Give me a second. Locked in equals false. Semicolon. And then else. Else, let's just do console.writeLine. There is not enough info. Semicolon. Now we can nope. Let's do console.write. I was going to have another if else statement here to check if locked in were true, but because it starts false, it would run even if there's not enough info, so we can't do a second if statement. So let's just do console.write line if locked in is false, you are not locked in. And if locked in is true, console.write line, you are locked in. Let's put periods, don't forget the semicolon. And this should be a working if statement. So you are not locked in because here we are procrastinating and we are, let's do that because we were not studying and we were not, and wait, why did that run? If procrastinating, we are, or we're not studying, we are, and we are not coding. We are coding though, so it shouldn't be we are not locked in. Maybe I misread that. There is not enough info. We are coding. Let's change procrastinating to false. We are locked in. Once procrastinating is true, then there's not enough info because we are procrastinating. We're not studying. Oh, we're not. Okay, so we are procrastinating and we're not studying. So this is false. So this comes out as false. So this is not being evaluated. So then it will never, it locked in is not false here, and it will, there's not enough info to determine whether or not, because we are coding, we could be locked in on coding instead of procrastinating, even while procrastinating and studying, meaning we can't determine whether or not we're locked in. Which means it goes down to this else statement and it runs this line. So let's do coding equals false, and it should run that we are not locked in. Yep, we are not locked in. All right, now that we're done with the if statement, let's remove this and we'll move on to switch statements. Switch statements have a different purpose than if statements. Therefore, we should not use the same code for a switch statement that we just used for an if statement. You should not convert one to the other or vice versa. Before we program a switch statement, let's quickly go over what it is. Switch statements evaluate a single expression once. It then compares the outcome with the value defined in the case statement and runs the code if they are equivalent. If they are not, it does not run that case. Switch statements are generally used with numerical values, numerical expressions, whereas if-else statements are used with Boolean expressions. Since switch statements allow you to account for multiple different outcomes instead of just true or false. So now that we know what a switch statement is, let's go program one. All right, I set up 3 integer variables. The values can change. This is just an example. Now let's create our switch statement. First we'll do switch, and then in parentheses, num times num2 plus num3. Close parentheses. Open curly braces. Then we'll do case And now the case should always be a constant expression. So here I'm going to do, let's just quickly get the one obvious one out of the way. 3 times 5, so 15 plus 9 should be 24. And then you need a colon. It shows a red line because we haven't finished writing the case statement yet. Okay, case 24. Here, wait. Let's quickly do, let's actually fix this. So we'll do int total equals num times num2 plus num3 semicolon. Then here we'll just do switch total, and then this should make it, it doesn't actually change the outcome, but it makes it easier to change the switch statement. So case 24, let's just do console.writeLine. The total is, comma, total, close parentheses, semicolon. It added close parentheses automatically. All right. At the end of the case statement, we are done with this case statement. Always include break semicolon. That breaks this case statement off and allows you to create a new case statement. So case, let's just say we forget order of operations and we do 5 plus 9, 14 times 3, which would be 28, 42, I believe. I could be wrong. Case 42, console.writeLine. The total is, comma, total, semicolon, break, semicolon. Then we'll do case, let's say we just like completely flip this around. We do num1 plus, we do num plus num3. So that would be 12 times 5. So case 60, colon, console.writeLine, writeLine. The total is, comma, total, close parentheses, semicolon, break, semicolon. And you can end this case statement whenever you want by just, or you can end the switch statement whenever you want by just writing new code or just going outside of this curly braces. This is the reason you do the curly braces. It will technically run even if you don't do these. However, this makes it both easier for you to determine when the case statement should end and where the switch statement ends, and it ensures the computer knows when the switch statement ends. So let's, now that we've created our case state or our switch statement, let's quickly run it. It should be 24. I ran one of these. Okay, maybe let's do total dot to string. Let's see if that fixes it. Dot to string. Dot to string. Control F5. No. It's running one of these. However, it is not outputting total, so let me go fix that real quick. Let me figure that out. I think I forgot comma might be plus. It's not plus. Yeah, it might be plus. Plus total. Yeah, let's try plus because that adds on to the end of the string instead of should be plus. Nope, should not be plus. Why is there a comma there? It should be plus. All right. I just forgot to remove the second comma. So yeah, when adding onto a string, make sure you do plus. And now let's change the value to be num2 plus num3. So that should come out to 42, I believe. Yep. And now let's do something crazy. This will just be num, and then it would be num2 times num plus num3. This should be 60. Yep. Switch statements check a value of an expression. One good way to know whether to use switch statements or if statements is if it's a Boolean expression, try to go for if statements. It'll generally be easier. Whereas switch statements should be used when it is an algebraic, or not necessarily algebraic, but like mathematical expression, anything of that sort, where there are multiple options other than just one or two. Like if you know what the outcome could be or should be in a single number, try to go for switch statements. But if it's like an inequality case less than 24 or something, use if statements because it would be significantly easier. All right. And now that we've programmed our switch statement, that's all for selection statements. And that means that's the end of the video. I will see you later with probably if statements and array, or not if statements, for loops and arrays. And yeah, all right. Bye.